Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to episode number 42 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. With me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
We will be bringing you all things craft beer on this latest episode as usual. Lots and lots going on. Who are we talking to this time, Dave?
So this time the guest is someone whose beer at least has featured in a previous episode, and that is Ogham, who were my brew to me a few episodes ago now. I can't quite remember how many, but a few episodes ago. They're from Tyneside Way, and I really enjoyed the brew to me, so much so that I thought they were well worth coming on for a proper chat because they are very new. I believe when I had the brew to me beer, which I think off the top of my head was Infinitum, that was their first beer and it was out in cans. We have a different beer which we're going to be sampling, but they are still very much in the infancy of their brewing experience and everything, so it's looking forward to talking to them.
And as the podcast goes on, it seems that we are getting more and more into talking to breweries at the start of their career, at the start of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than talking to the big boys who we all know, it's great to get hold of people on the first rung of the craft ladder and sort of chart their progress, really.
We want the scene to keep thriving, so finding people who are just starting out or haven't been going very long and shining light on them, I think, is very beneficial.
Also, we have got chat with some beer map makers, and we'll be talking to those later in our new section, Any Other Business. Oh yes, we've also got Hype or Tribe. Now, Any Other Business and Hype or Tribe, sometimes they may take one another's place, sometimes they might both appear. And on this episode, they're both appearing with not one but two beers from Pressure Drop, which we think are worthy of their place in Hype or Tribe. We've also got Tried and Tested. We've got Sam from Copper Beach, the brewer's wife, and we'll kick it off, as we usually do, with Brew to Me. This is the part of the podcast where we have a beer from a brewery we haven't sampled before. Sometimes it may be a new brewery that hasn't been going for long, or maybe just a brewery that we've somehow managed to omit from our craft CV and never sampled before. So what have you got this time, Dave?
I am taking a trip, not back home, but certainly a trip down memory lane in some ways, because for a long period of my life, I lived in Leicester. And a brewery that I definitely wasn't around when I was there is Mill Hill Brew Co., who are based in Enderby, out towards the M1 and the M69 way, Enderby side. Had a lovely email chain with Harry from Mill Hill. And interestingly, because I don't think this is a beer that's ever featured on Daftaboutcraft, I don't think we've had one, but the beer that I'm going to sample and Harry's going to tell you about is a white stout. Have we ever had a white stout?
I feel as though we may have mentioned one once, but I don't think we've drunk one on the podcast.
Now, I never pick a white stout as a beer. You don't see many of them. I don't mind them, but I rarely have them.
Hello, Harry here, head brewer at Mill Hill Brew Co. We're a small, independent, family-run microbrewery based in Leicester. Our team's just myself, my sister, and my brother-in-law Jay. We have the brewery, and we also have a pub called Mill Hill Cask and Coffee, which showcases a lot of the beers that we make. Our brewery is all about brewing beers with vibrant, fresh flavours and championing our home city of Leicester, which we feel is underrepresented on the craft beer map. Part of our ethos then is localism, and that's why we've worked with a local artist, Sam Grubb, on our branding and also our can designs and artworks. You'll see that they often feature a reference to Leicester, as well as our juice monster, Clive. If you have a look in the box that I sent across, as well as the feature beer, which I'll come on to discuss later, we sent across a couple of other beers, one called a Leicester Thing, which is obviously tying into our local football team, and Meet at the Clock Tower, which is a landmark and meeting place for people in Leicester. So hopefully you get to know our city a little bit better with every craft beer that you drink from us. The feature beer that we sent you for the podcast today is called Clive's Cocoa and Coffee. It's a white stout, so it's pale by appearance, but stouty in body, flavour and aroma. and we achieved this by using a lot of rich pale malts as well as lots of oats to give the body of stout, whilst infusing the beer with coffee beans and cocoa nibs. We sourced the coffee beans locally from a roastery called St Martin's and the cocoa nibs from a chocolatier called Coco Amour, based in the centre of Leicester. And in the box we sent you a chocolate bar, and it's actually encrusted with the cocoa nibs that we used, and it's going into our Easter gift box, which, might I add, is available from our web shop and makes the perfect Easter gift for your craft beer special someone. I hope that in the white stout you pick up those coffee notes from the beans and also those more subtle aromas and flavours from the cocoa nibs, and enjoy the beer along with the chocolate. Thanks for featuring us in your podcast, and be sure to come see us in Leicester soon. Many thanks from everyone here at Mill Hill Brew Co.
Well, thanks very much, Harry, from Mill Hill. Very interesting to hear what goes on up there. And this chocolate bar you've got, Dave, I'm very excited by this, because this is the first time we've featured chocolate on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it looks lovely. Does smell very nice. It really smells of the cocoa. It's a milk chocolate, but actually smells more towards dark chocolate. And it's sort of got a bit of a, I don't know if you can see that, it's sort of got almost like an egg in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice.
So I'm not a huge chocolate fan in the sense that I have more of a savoury than a sweet tooth, but I definitely want to try this. But as Harry says, I want to try the beer properly first and really sort of feel I know that first. So this is Clive's Cocoa and Coffee, for those of a Leicester accent, Mochaccino White Stout. As you'd expect,
Right.
It's light. It doesn't look like a stout, or not a conventional stout.
It's just whenever you say the word stout, even though you said white stout, your brain thinks, oh, it's going to be dark and thick and frothy and all of that.
So you've got a light beer, which if you lined them up on a bar, you'd say, oh yeah, 3 pails in a row if you bought a couple of pails. But no, it smells of pure coffee.
And what's it taste like? There's the big one.
Yeah, okay. What's interesting is actually even before the rest of the beer had hit, I got sweet coffee chocolate. That was the first thing that came through, almost like as if I'd had the bar of chocolate before the rest of the beer caught up. It was quite a strange sensation, but a nice one. Yeah, so that comes through first. Harry said it'd be a bit roasty. It is, but it's not that roasty. It's a really nice beer, actually. Doesn't feel heavy at all, even though technically it's a stout. The coffee hangs around, keeps you coming back.
It is fascinating when we do this and we try beers that usually we wouldn't gravitate to, and nearly every time we enjoy them. Yeah, I bet if you were in a bar and you saw there was a white stout, you wouldn't be racing towards it, even having enjoyed that.
It'd be very dependent on the taps list. I'd be curious. I know myself, if there were, 3 or 4 pails on this theoretical tap list, I'd have them first. Your point is right. Like, I wouldn't wouldn't be the first beer I'd walk into a bar and go, oh yeah, I'm going to have a white stout. But I definitely like this. I like this quite a lot. It's 5.6% and it's deceptive for that. I wouldn't have thought it was that at all. The vanilla's coming through a little bit more now as well. But it's got a really mellow middle from a vanilla, which is very impressive. It says on the back of the can, as Harry said, collaboration brew of Leicester provenance. We've used cocoa nibs from Cocoa Amore and coffee beans from St Martin's Roasters in combination with pale grains to make a white stout that will truly play with your senses. And it absolutely does that.
That phrase, play with your senses. For me, just sitting here watching you drink that and the colour of that, it's a bit like if you got 2 packets of crisps, you'd got a blue packet and a pink packet, and you open the blue packet and there were prawn cocktail inside, and the pink packet was cheese and onion. It completely messes with your brain.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, having talked about it as well, now I feel I know the beer a bit more. Got to see if it works with the chocolate as well.
I reckon this adds another layer to it.
The chocolate's lovely on its own.
And then what about if you have a quick chaser of the stout?
So if you have a quick chaser of the stout, it really accentuates the chocolatiness of the chocolate, and also what would be in the stout. It brings out the vanilla that little bit more. The coffee goes away a little bit and the chocolate comes through a bit more. That's very clever. I really like that a lot. I had real hopes that would be nice, but I haven't been disappointed at all. That's really, really good.
Excellent. I mean, probably worth mentioning as well, their can art, because that's pretty cool, isn't it?
I received these beers at work, and a colleague was saying, "Oh, you got more beer," because it is a common theme that happens in the office. I get a box, and 9 times out of 10 it's beer. she was looking at them and she said, "Oh, they're cool. It's cartoony. It's very cartoony art, but it's cool."
It reminds me of Playbrew a little bit.
Yes, but it's also different enough that I wouldn't think it's Playbrew.
Yeah, you wouldn't model them up, but they're a bit similar. Yeah, these are very vibrant, aren't they? All sorts of colours.
There's loads of colours going on in this. I've got another couple as well, which I really want to try. And they also, they've definitely got a wider range outside of just canning. I don't think the canning's a huge part yet, because I had a quick look on Untapped and on their feeds and everything, and they've got a lot of interesting stuff which is available on sort of cask and keg. So if you're in the Leicestershire area or perhaps a little bit further abroad and you see their stuff, absolutely seek it out. I'm very excited to try the rest of the beers I've got and to keep drinking this. And this is a big hit. I think we might have to have Harry on because I really like this.
Brilliant. Wow. That's a real ringing endorsement. Right, well, I'm going to Hollywood for my beer.
Hollywood, Northern Ireland, or Hollywood?
Hollywood, Northern Ireland, 1L, yes. And I have found a brewery called Modest Beer. And I thought, well, Modest Beer, that's just teeing itself up for me to say the beer is anything but modest. So I really hope it is, and I really hope it stands out. The guy behind this brewery is a guy called Chris Morris, who is a tax accountant by day and a brewer by night, or when he's not doing his day job. As happens a lot of the time, this venture grew out of a garage, bit of home brewing, and it led from one thing to another. And here they are making all sorts of beers. They've got a little core range and a more experimental range. And let me show you the can. I want you to tell me which brewery does this remind you of?
Hang on.
Scotland.
Oh, that wasn't where I was going. Or was I actually?
It's a similar sort of name, actually. Simple Things.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, once you see it, you can't unsee it, as they say. That is... So
you've got your silver can and then like an oval-shaped label on the front. Just the same as Simple Things.
Yeah.
Whose beers are anything but simple. So hopefully, like I say, these will be anything but modest. I'm going to crack open the can and pass you over to Chris, and he'll tell you all about the brewery.
Hello, Daftaboutcraft listeners. My name is Chris Morris, and I'm the founder of a little microbrewery based in Northern Ireland called Modest Beer. As a brewery, we are very much focused on lager beer and modern hop-forward ales, sitting between 4 and 5.5% ABV. However, we're also really big believers in the mantra of everything in moderation, including moderation itself. So whilst that's where our focus is, and that's where we're making some beers that we're really, really proud of, we're not completely bound by that framework, and we do really enjoy to push and challenge ourselves as brewers sort of outside of that remit. So in terms of history of the brewery, we launched in November 2019. But at that stage, Modest Beer was very much still a side hustle, a passion project for me. I was still working full-time as a chartered accountant, as I had been for the 12 previous years, and was running Modest Beer on evenings and weekends, basically every other waking hour. I started out by converting a residential double garage with about 2,000 litres of fermentation capacity. And by the summer of 2021, we had completely outgrown that garage unit that we were based in. And so we found our new and current home in a commercial unit in Randallstown in County Antrim, it's really only about 25 minutes outside of Belfast city centre. And with that move, we were able to double our fermentation capacity, and we share that unit actually with another brewery. So we were able to split the cost of a canning line as well, which was a massive game changer for us, having been using a mobile canning company up until that point. We've been primarily focused on the Northern Irish market here until recently. However, in the last sort of number of months, we've started to send more of our beer across to mainland GB, which is really exciting. So for any of the listeners today who are looking to try our beer, you can pick that up at beer merchants, either as part of their St. Patrick's Day mixed case, where we have a few beers alongside some other really exceptional Irish breweries that we're really proud to be associated with. And equally, I think they have 9 different beers of ours across a whole host of styles. So there's a really good selection there for any of your listeners who might be looking to go and pick up and try some Modest Beer for the first time. A massive thank you for extending the invite to come onto your podcast. We've sent across 3 beers for you to try. All of those beers are from our core range that we make year-round, beers that we've brewed many times and are really proud of. We've sent you a hazy pale ale, IPA, and our Pilsner. Hope you enjoy and really look forward to your thoughts. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Chris, there, for telling us all about the brewery. I'm excited to try this, especially out of my modest beer glass, Dave. Look at that. That is a thing of beauty.
This kind of weights your review to be favourable, the same as if I'd have got a hat or something.
Yes, this is my hat, isn't it? So what I've got here is their 5.5% juicy and exotic IPA.
It almost feels like the name of the beer is incidental, having you shown me the can. The main thing I got from that was it was a modest beer because of the labelling was just, it said modest beer. That was all I could see. I thought that was really smart. So what's in there hop-wise and everything?
Right, so hop-wise, this is your 3 Cs. This is Columbus, Citra and Cascade. Lovely body to this beer. Lovely colour. Lovely lacing on the glass. Everything's good. Beautiful, vibrant colour, actually. Juicy, little bit fruity up front. Back end bitter. There's a real punch at the end. It's not wasting away to nothing. There's plenty there. It leaves you wanting to go back for more. And actually, I've been getting through that pretty quickly, as you can see.
I was going to say, for the fact that your beer's ploughed through your new modest glass quite quickly.
Okay, so they've got their core range. I've got a few cans here from it. I've got New England Pale, there's a Pilsner, and then their more experimental stuff, which I'm hoping to get hold of at some time, is quite interesting because they've got an oatmeal stout, Czech dark lager.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
A strawberry fizz, a Keller beer.
Oh,
Double New England. They've got all sorts, actually. They've covered the whole range. You know, the sours, stouts, pales.
my ears certainly pricked up at talk of Keller beers and Czech-style dark lagers. Now, I was saying to you, obviously, when we were talking about this, I didn't realise, because we never really consult who we're doing for Brew to Me until we almost do it. I didn't realise that these guys were Northern Ireland, and I wouldn't necessarily think to go to Northern Ireland to get stuff because I'd be thinking of postage and whatnot. That's not the case, is it?
No, it's just like posting from anywhere else in the UK, isn't it? Sending stuff out from Northern Ireland to the mainland if you want.
Which makes sense because I was out in Ipswich last week and there was Bullhouse beer in cans.
Bullhouse just won an award, BRX, I see, for their tap room, I think it was.
Well, I love Bullhouse. I think they're great. I did absolutely have my pants pulled down for a round of 5 cans that I bought in Ipswich to show friends that I was with how good Bullhouse were. The same place said, we're going to have one of their beers on tap at, I think, when it's the King's Coronation. I hope they're charging less for a pint than they are for what they charge for a can. But Bullhouse, I would always recommend from Northern Ireland. I always think of them very, very favourably.
Yeah, we were just saying there as well off air, there's more and more breweries popping up in the Republic and in Northern Ireland. Maybe we should do a special focusing on that scene, I think.
If anyone's listening and they have some Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland recommendations of people we should be getting in touch with to feature, then do let us know.
Should just say that when we do this feature, by the end of it, I've very rarely got through all of my beer, but I've got about 1 sip left of this 440ml can, so it's gone down very nicely.
Yeah, I think the proof seems to be in the tasting. You seem to have got the hang of the bitterness anyway.
That bitterness took me a little bit by surprise. Then once I'd taken it on board and knew what was coming, it's gone down very easily. Really good. Very well made beer.
Excellent. Well, it seems like we've got two winners on the segment this time.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
We are delighted to have a guest on the episode, and this time it is Michael of Ogham Brewing. Good evening, Michael. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Welcome along. Now, have you got a beer in hand? That's the first question.
I do, of course I do.
It's got to be one of your own as well, surely.
It is, especially for this occasion.
Excellent. Well, we've both got one. You've got one as well, haven't you, Dave? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'm right in saying, having had the first, we're now having the second as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. This is Labfada, the second brew.
So do you want to tell our listeners all about Ogham, how long you've been going? Obviously not too long because this is only your second beer, and like a little potted history to put everybody in the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ogham Brewing was started by just me and my wife about 8-9 months ago now. almost on a whim. It wasn't quite a whim. I'd been brewing for a while. I'd gotten very into it. And at some point you just go, hey, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do this for myself. Just ignored the fact that there's obviously so many breweries kind of closing down at the minute, and thought, well, I'll give it a go, see what happens. Yeah, so Ogham, the name comes from the old ancient Irish language of Ogham. That came from the god Ogma, who was the god of wisdom, and he had his book of infinite knowledge, which he passed down to the people. He also had lots of links to hospitality. So they just kind of went hand in hand. I made a low percent beer that you could just kind of keep on drinking, and that was where that idea came from. And then with the Lamfada, that was the nickname given to Lugh, who was a bit of a warrior god, warrior king. And Lamfada is the Irish translation of long arm. That was his spear. He was so good with his spear, it was an extension of his arm. I'm not quite sure if I come up with the names of the beers and think about them first and then decide what I want to make. I'm pretty sure that is how I do it, actually. I've never put much thought in. So yeah, with Lamfada that we're drinking at the minute, that was the thought. I wanted a punchy, kind of fiery IPA.
Yeah, I was just going to say there, without trying to shoehorn in sort of a warrior type take on the beer, it is punchy. You've gone for Yukino and Sabro, which isn't a combination you see very often, actually.
No, and it's something I really enjoy in my IPAs. I mean, if I'm going to have a lighter beer, I prefer a pale, but with my pales, I like it to be really light and pillowy and fruity. And with my IPAs, I like them to be dry and punchy, a little bit kind of old school, There's so many kind of, definitely going for the East Coast, and I do like the East Coast, but sometimes a Westie's nice.
Yeah, that's getting some West Coast vibes off that for sure. Even though it's hazy and sort of not see-through like you would sort of associate with a lot of West Coast, there's a lot of West Coast taste to it. That does stand out. It's refreshing, actually, in its own way, despite being so dry. It does make you keep going back.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's where I think my experience with brewing at the start was always kind of using what we had. And we happened to have a lot of Huguenot at the time, and we just gotten Sabro in. Those were kind of two flavors that I was experimenting with at that time. And again, like you say, it's not a combination that you do see very often.
No, not at all.
But when it's all you've got in the fridge, the hot fridge, it's you find a way to make that work.
I'll tell you what, though, I don't think I would have guessed that was Sabro if we didn't know. And Sabro is usually quite an easy one to pick out.
Very small amount.
That's what I was going to get onto. How small was the amount, yeah.
Well, when it was first kind of canned, you got a lot of Sabro. Maybe a little bit too much Sabro. But it's mellowed down really nicely as we've got on. But yeah, the Sabro was mostly in the dry hop. Right. And it was only maybe about 20% the entire hop profile. So definitely more on the Huguenot. There was some mosaic in the boil as well, just to add to that fruitiness.
So 2 beers you released in 8 months.
Yes.
That's nice and steady. Some new breweries get sort of suckered into pumping out loads of beers really quickly, but you've taken your time. I like that.
Yeah, it's something I'm very strong on. If I don't like something, I mean, even from just a purely business point of view, if I don't like something, I can't sell it. And being, the only member of the team, if I'm a terrible salesman, it's not going to last. It's not going to last very long. So I will only put out a beer that I'm 100% with, that I've worked on to the point that I go, yep, I can sit and have all these in my fridge and drink them back to back and not get sick of it, which is quite a high standard to put anything up to.
The brewery is very much in the infancy. Is it the day job as well? Is this all you do 24 hours, 7 days a week, or do you have a sideline as well? To sort of...
Yeah, so I'd kind of gone from, I've worked in hospitality most of my time. So I was still working in bars while this was starting. And then I did leave to do this full time. And then obviously we had winter and January and February, notoriously bad times for bars and breweries. So yeah, just picking up little bits on the side, but this is definitely the main focus.
So if you've worked in hospitality, presumably you've got a lot of contacts in the industry and places to sell your beers as well.
Yeah. That's been a big thing for us, absolutely. I mean, it was great to be able to go into all the bars that I've either worked in or I know the people, and it was a good kind of boost at the start because a lot of these people just say, oh yeah, we know you, we know you know good beer, so yeah, we'll take on a keg, and then obviously it's not backfired on them because the beer's been good.
Yeah, that's a massive head start. You're not going into it blind, are you, with no customer base? You've got people there ready to sell to.
Like, it helped with my pricing structure massively. Having been like a general manager, I know how much beer is worth. I know how to price it. And with that, I try to make sure that, because I was kind of often getting upset at seeing like a 3.5% beer for £6 or £7, especially when we're up in the northeast. So that was always just frustrating to me. I don't mind paying that much for a big beer. And that was kind of Infinium. That was what kind of started the whole thing. It was, I wanted something nice and low percent and just not, I'm not trying to make loads and loads of money out of this. I just kind of want a product that I'm passionate about, and hopefully that takes so much that I don't need to charge the earth for it.
I noticed on the back of the can it says that Full Circle do the canning for you.
Yeah.
The Northeast, I would imagine, is a good place to get a lot of help in that when you're starting up.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, with the Infinium and the Lamfada, Full Circle they've done the brews, so it's kind of been contracted out to them for like the big batches. But yeah, it's been fantastic to have people like that are willing, because I could never afford to buy the kit that they have. I could never.
There's some setup there at Full Circle, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's one of the best. It's one of the best you'll see about. And to kind of have that at your fingertips was just, well, quite frankly, ridiculous for a brewery just starting out. But they're all more than happy. And honestly, the guys were fantastic as well. And like putting me in touch with people, God, just everything, and everyone's like that. Everyone I spoke to, I mean, I just know a lot of the brewers and breweries around here. And I don't think there's anybody I spoke to that didn't give me at least one good piece of advice.
Are you self-taught, or have you learned from others? And what's your sort of brewing history been?
So I started off with Newcastle Brewing Limited and started off working in the bar. This was obviously in Newcastle. And as it went on, I was always very interested in the brewery. It was just a little microbrewery in the back. We were a tap room, and I'd always pester. Can I come in for a day? Can I brew for a day? I'll help with the cleanup. I'll take the grain out. I was always just pestering constantly. And eventually, it came as like, if you're happy enough to come in at 6 a.m, finish that at 3 or 4 and then do your shift afterwards, you can absolutely come in and brew. And I did that for a while. And do you know what? It was really tiring. I was just knackered by the end of it. But in 3 months, I had more brewing experience than a lot of people that are trying to get in.
Yeah. What great grounding as well.
Well, yeah. It's not hard to get into brewing. You can be self-taught. You can do lots of things at home, but to actually be in a professional environment and not have to go through like an apprenticeship or not have to have a degree to kind of get into some of the bigger places, which is the case now, it was invaluable. So I was gonna put that time in. Yeah, it was great. So I brewed there for two and a bit years. And then unfortunately they've recently gone into administration as well. It was a really good start.
You were saying you contracted brews out to Full Circle. You've got your own kit as well, presumably.
Tiny.
How tiny is it?
Tiny kits.
How tiny is it?
20 litres.
Oh, wow, really?
Oh, yeah, you weren't kidding.
So what I would do, I think this was how it all kind of started. I would obviously do the big herb, and I say big herb brews. I mean, we were brewing on a 50-litre kit at Newcastle Brewing. So like we were doing double brew, so make it 100, 120 by the time we were finished. But it's still very small scale. It's really hands-on, when we're elbow deep with a potato masher to try and get all the juice out of the hops, it's really hands-on, which I loved. So yeah, I got myself a small little kit, and then we were brewing there. I would have an idea, but obviously it wasn't my brewery, so I couldn't just start changing recipes and doing things. So I would go home and I would maybe buy some of the off hops, or if there was like a couple of kilos left in a sack of grain, I would see if I could take that as just like off bits or whatever, and then I would just mess about at home. It was all for self-consumption then.
It kind of sounds like you've been biding your time, slowly, learning a bit here, learning a bit there, finessing and getting everything just right.
Yeah, and that's been the fantastic thing about the contracting with Full Circle. It's given me a chance to get out there, to get my name out there and have a product out there. And it's also helped with the kind of funding that, like now, as I'm selling the beers, I'm building up funds, because I do have a plan.
What's the plan?
So obviously get a bigger kit than 20.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, yeah.
But not massive. In saying that, I don't ever really intend to go too big. I'm thinking maybe a barrel kit.
Okay.
Just a nice, simple 3 vessel. I'd like to have three fermenters. I can do the rest. But I think small scale like that, and I think the reason I want to keep it small scale, with my family has like a very small little holding out in Gateshead, a little bit of farmland, and we're thinking about growing our own hops.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's an interesting twist.
Yeah. So there's some pigs, some sheep, and what we used to do, and a lot of people do, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's standard everywhere, but it's definitely pretty standard up here, sending your spent grain to the farm. So I thought, well, we've got a farm, So if I've got grain, I may as well just send it straight there. Using the hops as compost, make a compost, help feed the hops that I'm growing myself, and try and create quite a nice, like, sort of circular idea. But in doing that, I would still have to keep it quite small scale, like I say, because if you get too big, then it's not for a small team. I mean, obviously, expansion, maybe 5 years down the line or something. But for now, I want to just keep it really local, and can't really get much more local than that.
Out of all the people we've ever spoken to, you're the first one who's ever said you're going to grow your own hops. And we've spoken to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Nobody else has ever said that.
Wow. Well, we're gonna try to.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you've got the space, it's definitely doable. I mean, people do it around here, and I've always been dead interested in like green hopping things, and it's like such a big thing. Like once a year when the hops are all fresh, and just seeing what happens. And I think that kind of ties into my way of brewing, of work with what you've got.
And hop wise, would you sort of go for the British varieties, sort of like your Jester, Olicana, things like that?
I would definitely start with them, purely because they're proven to grow well here.
Yeah.
But if it goes well enough, I would definitely expand out a bit. And again, I'd only ever make as much as I would use, and not even for the full year, really. It would be for kind of one-offs and specials. And
Well, that was my next question. Like, how many hops do you need for, say, the kind of kit size that you're talking about? Because because we've never had someone on who's talking about growing their own hops. We don't.
Not an awful lot.
Right.
So let's say if I was at about 120 liters, kind of brewing, which is what I'd imagine to be at, you could make, well, if you're using like T90 pellets, you could get quite a nice hoppy beer. You could definitely do like an American IPA style with 800 grams of hops.
It's not a huge amount at all.
Not a huge amount. It all depends on where you put in it. Obviously, if you used more of that in the bitter inside, or add it throughout in like kind of steps, which when you're doing it smaller scale, and it's much more hands-on, it's a lot easier to add hops in increments. You know, like your half hour, minute in the boil, or 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and then like it kind of 1 minute at the end, instead of what it tends to be now is kind of bitter at the start and then whirlpool, and get all your flavour right then, which makes sense on a big scale, because on a big scale you don't want to be climbing up and adding a little bit here and a little bit there, but small scale, totally doable. And you can I find you can control where the flavour comes in a lot better like that. But yeah, so I mean, obviously now these hops are not going to be as pungent as T90s. So, no. But I wouldn't be planning on making like proper hoppy. So probably. I mean, if you could get a kilo of hops, a kilo of fresh hops, you could definitely make a hop forward beer, I would say. We'll find out.
I can't get my head around. I can't get my head around why more breweries aren't doing this. Actually, you know, on a small scale.
Yeah, I guess obviously it's time. You don't get an awful lot. You'll probably only get 1 or 2 brews out of a yield. But to me, that's fun. I'll happily get excited all year just for one batch. And it might turn out awful, but hey, that's part of the fun, isn't it? Yeah. So that's part of the plan. So it'll be at least a year now before anything's ready. But yeah, hopefully just a little yearly special of some nice homegrown hops.
So you'll carry on sort of contracting your brewing out to places like Full Circle, and then more sort of experimental stuff on your own kit.
Yeah, I think that's the plan for now. Obviously, once I've got a product that I'm really happy with, and to me it's perfect, then yeah, I'm happy to have a bunch of it in stock. But obviously with the experimental things, I'd much rather only have maybe 5 or 6 kegs of it in case it's gone completely wrong.
You said before you don't want to get too big. Is there sort of a level you want to get to?
Comfortable, to be honest. That's
You just want to make a living out of it.
Yeah. If I can make enough doing something that I really enjoy, if I have to spend 60, 70, 80 hours a week going up to the farm and brewing and, you know, tending to the hops and helping feed things, but I enjoy every bit of it, then yeah, great. That's all I need.
So having worked in hospitality and having done the brewing, which do you well, I think I know the answer to this, but what do you prefer the most?
I definitely prefer the brewing side of it. I enjoyed hospitality for a long time, but I think there comes a point, well, for me, I just couldn't do the 12-hour. The thing is, I could do 12 hours of brewing. That's no problem.
Different thing, isn't it?
But it's just it's just something different. And I think also it's being more hands-on, creating something. That's something that I guess I didn't realize that I was missing out on when I was younger in hospitality. I didn't realize that I had the kind of yearning to create things and quite a wonderful feeling to, at the end of the day, yeah, you've worked hard and you've probably burnt your arm and you're, covered in all sorts. But when somebody comes in and drinks it and says, wow, that was really nice, you did that, you can't compare it, really.
We're very much enjoying. Well, I certainly am. I don't want to speak for Dave, but
no, I am.
I've nearly finished mine.
I'm already on the second can. What
are you?
What are you
crikey! Well, there you go. That's a ringing endorsement. But what I was going to say is, obviously, this is Lamfarder, the second beer. Do you have the third, and sort of what have you got in the pipeline? Have you got plans or ideas?
Yes.
A man with a plan.
It's a tough one, let me tell you.
Okay.
Okay.
I've tried a few different times and I can't quite get it right. Hence why nothing's been released, because it's not up to scratch. But it's, without giving too much away, pineapple, black pepper, and brown sugar kind of roasted. Roast that all up, and then I'm leaving that in, and I'm trying to make like a nice kind of ready saison, but more like a sour kind of saison.
Ooh, nice.
With some nice kind of fruitier tropical hops that are complementing the pineapple. To be fair, I've got the flavour bang on, but what I can't get right is the yeast, because I never really worked with saison yeast that much, so it is definitely just it's a bit more experimentation.
That's quite a departure from what you've already done then. What's making you go down that route? I mean, it sounds wonderful to me. I'm great. Can't wait.
I think I'm very much, once ideas pop, well, remember how I said about how I kind of come up with the names first and then think of the recipe?
Right.
So Infinium, so inspired by the God of Knowledge. Lamfarder, inspired by the Warrior King. And then this was going to be something to do with Dagda, and he was the kind of druid. So there was like the main three, the Tuatha, the trio, the Danann. They were the main three of these old ancient Irish gods. And he was a druid. I just thought a druid would really like a saison.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Like a farmhousey saison. It's like the classic kind of 3.6 or 3% farmhousey saison. And then I just happened to have pineapple in the house that day, and honestly that's it. That's just stuck, and I've gone, that's the perfect idea. And now I will obsessively keep creating this until I get it perfect.
How many beers have you got planned out at this point?
5. A core 3, which would be Infinium, Lamfarder, and then the undecided name of the third one. And then I want to have like 2 specials. I'd love to make an Imperial Stout. I love an Imperial Stout. I think they're fantastic beers. So I'd like to do like one of them. And then I haven't got the 5th one planned, but I have the name kind of ready. It'll almost be like a family tree of beers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Am I right in saying that you've got a big interest here in Irish history and you're tying that in with the beers? It's 2 interests in one, almost.
Yes.
Because obviously you're in the northeast of England, but your accent is not from the northeast of England.
No. I'm from a small town on the north coast of Ireland. Moved over to here about 9 years ago. But it's always an interest in Irish history is always, that's never kind of left. I've always looked into it and can't quite explain it. One day it just clicked.
So would there be a bit of an achievement if you could get your beers shipped over and enjoyed in Ireland as well?
Yeah, definitely. There's a brewery that we're interested in doing a collaboration.
Brilliant.
Which would be great. Logistically a nightmare, but in theory great. So hopefully we'll maybe work on that. Maybe work on another couple of collabs coming up soon. We'll see.
Surely there's got to be some sort of collab with Full Circle at some point.
That would be definitely something we'd look into.
Well, we've been talking about the self-sustainability and this bit of land and everything. Is it so far out of the way that it couldn't lend itself to having some sort of tap room? Or,
to be honest, when I started the brewery, it was kind of an escape from hospitality in the kind of late hours. So I was dead against a tap room at the start for the first. I know it's not been that long, but for the first maybe 6 months, I was like, no, I won't touch it. I'll never get a venue. I'll never get anything. But the more I've kind of done it, the more I've thought, actually, it wouldn't be so bad to just have a little tap room, just have the brewery in the back, serve some beers at the front. Might be quite nice.
From a business point of view, it makes obviously perfect sense to make your beer, set it on site. You're winning every way in that way, aren't you?
That's the thing. It does make a lot of sense in that from that thing. And I could make my own hours. I could be the only bar that closes at
Oh, yeah.
8:00.
Where I live here, I've got Nothing Bound, which isn't far from me, and they are in the most remote location you could ever imagine, just in the middle of nowhere, and they're full every week because they've built this great place, and the product is great, and people come, and people will come if it's good.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
So where do you see yourself sort of down the road in 2, 3, 5 years' time? What would your aspirations be?
God, I mean, at this point, even just having everything set up and running smoothly seems like so far off in the distance. But yeah, have a proper little unit set up. Have everything kind of working so I know when, once a year I've got my special release. I know when these things are happening. Maybe a bit more structure to everything instead of just kind of thinking up a recipe and going, oh, I'll just blast this out and see if it works. It being a small kit like that, I'd quite like to do some collabs with like a lot of the local bars, and I think I'd quite like that to be a bit of like a more of a focus for obviously like the wholesale side of things, and just kind of going to every bar and saying, what do you want? Do you want to come round and we'll make it together? On your bar, you can say, hey, I made this, which I think will be nice, and that's a nice way to keep everyone involved with it.
Does the current climate scare you somewhat? Because as we're talking, as we're recording this tonight, we've just got news of another closure, not far from you, in Black Storm Brewery. It must be in your mind that all these breweries are closing down, and you must think, how are we going to survive?
Yeah, and I think the only thing, and perhaps it's holding me back a little bit, but I think it's why I don't particularly want to expand too much.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
If I can keep it small enough, and I mean, if it meant I had to get a part-time job and just maybe work 1 or 2 days a week just to bump up any sort of income, I'd like to keep it going as, even if it's just a hobby, as a side project, but I'm all too aware that if I start going for really big kits and I start renting out big spaces and I start buying kegs and buying things, if at any point it goes wrong, it all has to go.
It's almost becomes a problem when you reach that next level, doesn't it? You're okay when you're small, but when you start to expand, then you're opening yourself up to problems. Yeah,
and that's it. And luckily enough, I'm quite happy to just get, like I said, just to be comfortable and content.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think that's the way to go.
And I really do hope everything improves, obviously for everyone's sake. It'll be sad to see any more breweries kind of go down. I mean, I've already seen far too many people that I know or I've really respected, or beers that I've absolutely loved. I mean, there's breweries that I saw them go under, and I was thinking to myself, God, that was one of the first beers that I had that made me go, I love beer. And, they've not made it through. So, in a way, you kind of think, well, what makes me any different? But you just got to kind of crack on, don't you?
So if people want to get hold of your beers, people listening to this now, what's their best option? Where can they get your beer from? Because having drunk 2 cans of this now, this one is very, very nice.
The most interesting thing is I had a conception of what I was expecting because I'd had your first beer. I never would have thought that was going to taste like that for your second beer, and in a really good way. 2 really distinctively different beers, but both really good for different reasons.
Thank you. That's lovely to hear. You can find me mostly in Newcastle. I am in the midst of getting my premises license, and once that's all gone ahead, then I'll be open to kind of like public.
You can sell from
trade. Yeah,
super.
Exactly. At the minute, it's kind of wholesale only. Surprisingly, the easier of the licenses to get hold of. But yeah, we should be going live on Ebria shortly. So for any wholesalers, you'll be able to get some kegs on there soon.
Absolutely, anybody listening to this who's thinking, what brewery do we get next? If you can get hold of some kegs of this stuff on Ebria, absolutely go for it, because this is great. I've loved this beer. A little bit different to your usual IPA, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, that's it. That's what makes it stand out. It's an unusual hop combination, and I think the word you used at the start when you said punchy, that sums it up. It is punchy. Yeah, very enjoyable.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's it. You've had one.
Yes. Yeah, you do know you've had one.
You do, actually, yeah. Or 2, yeah. I'm fascinated by your story and your approach to all of this. I'd love to come back in 12 months' time and see how you're going. That would be really interesting if we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to come on.
And hopefully we'll have some hops to talk about as well. I think that's the most fascinating part for me. I'm really fascinated to see how that turns out for you.
Well, we'll see you in the spring of 2024 then, Michael. Thanks very much indeed. Right, it's time for Tried and Tested, where we tell you what we've been drinking over the last few weeks since our last episode, and tell you what we've been enjoying the most. Now, for me, I don't like picking a beer that I see everywhere else and everybody else is drinking, but I'm going to have to. Dipper 3 from Glass House in Birmingham. 8% Dipper. This is such a good beer. Everybody round in my neck of the woods has been really giving it the thumbs up and saying how good it was. I thought I'm going to have to try it. I don't like to like everything that everybody else likes, if you know what I mean, but I really did. It was hard to fault this. 8% double IPA with Nectar on, which is the hop of the moment. Nectar on is everywhere all of a sudden. Citra and Nelson Sauvin. And this was thick and fruity without being overpowering. It wasn't cloying in any way. It was fruity but not sticky. It was just great and didn't taste anything like its 8%. Went down really well. Really recommend it if you see that. Dipper 3 from Glasshouse.
Just before I do mine, I would say with Glasshouse, they seem to be really kicking on a gear. I feel like it's a matter of time until I go into the arcade, which is, as regular listeners will know, the bastion of craft in Ipswich at the moment. I'll go in there and I'm just waiting until there's something of theirs on tap. I don't feel it's far away because I think they're sort of really starting to kick on. The can art seems to have gone through the roof as well. Like, that's really distinctive now as well. Interestingly, we're both on the same sort of tip here, which doesn't often happen when it comes to our tried and tested, because you generally lean towards something big and stouty, whereas I can be a bit all over the place. But this time I am also on the New England wagon, and this is Dreaming of DDH Ella by Track. And this was just a case almost of the beer fitting the mood. I had it on a Sunday evening. I'd had a couple of beers. I'd had a Saison, which I bought back from Belgium a few months ago. I'd had something else. They were fine, but they weren't quite cutting it. What I really wanted was something big and fruity, and I didn't know what this beer was going to look like or anything. I just thought, no, I got this a few weeks ago, I'm going to have it. It came out of glass, and it was that big, hazy, pale yellow colour, which I hadn't seen in a little while, and it tasted superb. So whether that was the situation as much as it was the beer, I'm not quite sure, but I do know it was a very good beer. It wasn't just purely because I wanted a beer like that. It filled the brief and some. If you want a big, fruity, juicy banger, that's what it was. It just worked. I just thought, this is my tried and tested because it's done exactly what I want it to do in that moment, rather than it being something absolutely immense. It is a really good beer, but it fit the situation perfectly. And
sometimes when you have a beer like that, you just think, yes, that's it. That's my tried and tested for the next episode. You know straight away, don't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, as soon as I had that, I was like, oh, I think that's nailed on.
Daftaboutcraft.
It's Brewer's Wife time now on Daftaboutcraft, and we're joined by Sam, one half of the Copper Beach Brewing Company from Kidderminster. How you doing, Sam?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
What have you got for us?
So I thought we would talk about how the brewery got its name. Some people might be aware of this already, but also it had another name before we were the Copper Beach Brewing Company.
I don't know what this name was.
I mean, we never talked about this. Obviously, you know, our kind of origin of why the brewery came about was because Dan had it to escape from the clutches of mental health and anxiety, and it was kind of like his remedy to that. So it started out as Antidote Brewing.
Wow, never knew that.
I know, and people are probably thinking that's a better name. The reason why we steered away from Antidote in the end was that Dan felt that there may be implications of thinking about alcohol being some sort of medicinal thing.
I get that.
Yeah, so it was kind of a bit of a tricky one.
It was named Copper Beach because the brewery started in your garden under a copper beech tree.
Yeah, so the shed, this is how the name came about. We all sat around the shed that we built, the brew shed. Behind that, there was a copper beech tree with a preservation order on it, and it used to hang right over into our garden, right over. And in the summer, the branches would be over the door of the brewery. Yep. So we were just sitting there brainstorming, and I just looked out and saw the tree, and I thought, oh, what about Copper Beach? And yeah, it just kind of went from there.
How's the tree doing now, Sam?
Well, yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? The tree, poor blooming tree, that we named our entire business after, apparently didn't have a preservation order on it after all. But it also unfortunately got diseased. And the people a few gardens down sort of took it upon themselves to contact the council about it and have it removed. And we had to pay for the pleasure as well.
That's great, that, isn't it?
We had to chip in to get this blooming tree removed.
So you name your business basically after this tree, which you then have to part pay to get removed because it's diseased. Nice.
Yeah, basically. So the tree is no more, but we have scavenged some of the wood because it was a huge tree. But yeah, it's just quite hilarious to think that the tree that our company's named after has been burnt in people's log burners and all sorts.
Look, I hope that's not some sort of nasty metaphor for the future.
Oh God, yeah, so do I. So do I. But the antidote brewing, when this is, you know, when you get ideas that when you look back at them, they're almost embarrassing now. Like Dan will probably kill me for even talking about it. But like we used to think it was really funny to try and come up with beer names that like were like pun.
Yeah.
So we were like things like Paraportamol.
When I talk to Dan, he's often saying, "Oh yeah, that'd make a great beer name. That'd make a great beer name." I think brewers
think in beer names.
Just think in beer names all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of, we had some really bad ones. Like I think, I brew Profen. It's just awful. Like when you look back at it, and we thought we were so clever. There
were some breweries that really trade off that sort of thing, though.
I know, but they do it so well. We definitely wouldn't have done.
Daftaboutcraft. And now it's time for hype or tripe.
Now, a brewery me and Dave have had our eye on for a little while. Comes as no surprise, it's a great brewery, Pressure Drop. We're often watching them and we see their can art and it really keeps piquing our interest. We see it and we think, oh, this looks great. Then all of a sudden, they'd got a beer that was ideal for hype or tripe. And then they got another, they got two. So we're going to do them both, Dave.
Yes, we're both big fans of Pressure Drop. And we'd love to have them on. And we have tried sort of messaging them indirectly anyway, so we may as well do a blatant poke to try and get them on for a future episode, because I actually turned 10 this year.
Yeah.
And we thought that was a very significant milestone. It seems to be a lot of breweries celebrating milestones this year. Wiper and True, at the sort of time this comes out, have just celebrated their 10th birthday.
I think Siren are another one going.
Yeah, Siren, exactly about the same. A couple of days earlier, they will have celebrated 10 years.
So they were all in the first raft of these craft beer breweries that shaped the industry almost.
Yeah, it's actually an indictment of how quickly time goes. I sort of still think of Pressure Drop as brand new, and then you have a few of their beers and you see ones they're bringing back and you think, oh yeah, I remember having Pale Fire. Oh yeah, I had Pale Fire a lot of years ago. It feels like it was 2 years ago.
The great thing though is when you look at their cans, it all looks so vibrant still and so fresh and so new.
Yeah, that was something I really wanted to talk about with Pressure Drop. Their can art, you can spot a standard Pressure Drop, I think. They've managed to create that, even though it's not necessarily a core beer, and some are. You can spot one, but they're ones that they do slightly different things with, really have been standing out of late. The two we've got definitely do that, but the other one to mention as well is Crab Facts, which I thought they did a superb job on social media. And funnily enough, beer sold out really quick.
Well, for weeks they were just putting random crab facts on their Instagram feed, and you were thinking, have they been hacked here? What's this got to do with anything? And every day there'd be another crab fact, and then they launched this beer, Crab Facts, and it's it's like a light bulb moment. All of a sudden, you suddenly realise what they'd been doing, and what a great way to get people's interest.
Yeah, it was a superb piece of marketing. But the first beer that we're going to talk about a little bit, well, we'll talk about them simultaneously, but the beer I have, we have both, and we decided, and the one I've been thinking about this ever since the order arrived at the start of the week, is a beer called Cheese, and this is Cheese Volume 2. Now, it's New England IPA, 7.4%, or yellow can art, as you would expect, and tagline is bite into the taste of strata and mosaic. So this should be a little bit dank, a little bit verdancy, I would have thought.
A little bit thick, a little bit chewy, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of after. I don't really want it to be fruity, but I want it to be sort of a bit stinky almost, a bit vegetal.
Do you know what it made me think of when I saw the beer? That awful cheese and onion from Northern Monk. And I know.
Oh, I hope it's better than that.
And I know it's going to be nothing. I know it's nothing like that, but that's what it made me think of.
It smells like cheese and onion.
Oh, does it? Oh, right. Well,
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's really. That is. Yeah, we're on the dank. We're on a dank tip with that for sure. That's Yeah, that smells very oniony. That's great. Like I want it to.
Can't have a beer called cheese if it doesn't fulfil the cheese brief.
Oh gosh, that is strong onion. Like not eye-wateringly like chopping an onion strong, but it is strong onion. Oh yeah, it's dank to taste as well. So it starts strata, so it's a bit sticky, resiny, and then the mosaic comes through, but it's not a really harsh mosaic. So there's a little bit of bitterness, but it's not too much. It is a New England. If you're after a juice with all the O's and all the S's, this isn't the beer to go for. But they've made it clear that that's not what this is going to be.
Yeah.
It's a really clever change up on New England style. It just shows you can still brew something big and hazy in the glass, but it doesn't necessarily have to just be Citra combined with something else to make it fruity.
It sounds like you're quite enjoying that. This is an interesting question. How would it be actually accompanied by some cheese?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think it'd actually work very nicely.
Yeah. From what you've said, that's the impression I get.
What would I want with that? I'd almost want quite a really strong, crumbly cheddar.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want blue. I don't need creamy. I need something quite acidic to cut the top off the beer almost, if that makes sense. That's what I would want with this. Now I think we'd really be cooking. I think that'd work really well. I like this. It is a hype beer. It works really, really well. I would have always picked this. Like if I was doing an order anyway, regardless if we're doing Hypertron, I would have ordered this beer. I would have wanted to try it.
It was one of those beers that you saw it and you thought, I want to see what this is like.
Exactly. Is it a beer I would go back to? But I don't know if that matters.
This is just a beer for you to try. It's not one that you would seek out again and want it. And I imagine the one I'm about to have will fall in exactly the same category.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like it. I don't love it, but that's to say I do like it a lot. Like it's not just, I like it, it's okay. It's better than okay. I think you've nailed it. It's just a standalone beer.
Yeah.
It works really well in this moment right now to have this. Am I then going to think, I'd want to have that cheese this time next week? I don't think I will. Like I've had it, I've enjoyed it, I can move on.
I think a beer can be good and it can fulfill the brief and you can really enjoy it, but not want it again. I don't think the mark of a good beer comes by saying I want it again. I don't want every beer again. In fact, by our very nature and what we do here, we don't often want the same beer twice. But
talking out of both sides of my mouth, if Pressure Drop left this alone for a year and then did volume 3 and they did a similar can, I know full well I'd buy it, so job done.
It's worth saying that me and Dave ordered a whole batch of beers from Pressure Drop for this feature, and just last night I sat and drank 5 of the beers straight off.
I didn't know you'd done that.
Yeah, straight off.
Brilliant. What did you have?
There were mainly, a couple of sours.
Oh, yes, there were sours on there, weren't there?
There was a green sour with grapes and melon. There was an apricot sour, and then there was a
goze. Did you have the goze?
Had the goze, yes. Then there was a session pale, which was about 3.2%, which was really good.
Oh, is that the cryo one?
The cryo one, yes, that was excellent.
Oh, I've got that. I haven't had that yet. Interestingly, as well, just to finish that off, this is the second Pressure Drop beer I've had tonight because I started with the light lager.
Was that while you were cooking?
Yes, exactly that. And
perfect.
It was superb for that. Great beer. Measured up very well with the Duration Cloudwater take on the American pale, American lager rather, which I've mentioned before in Tried and Tested. It's certainly a very accomplished brewery that can cover all styles.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I've got is the can with the cartoon strip on it. Monstrous Unnatural Thing. And this is an 8.5% dipper with 2 hops, Mosaic, which you see everywhere, of course, and then Idaho 7. Now, Idaho 7, you're thinking pungent tropical fruits here, and I opened the can a couple of minutes ago, and it was about 2 feet away from me on the table here, and you could get those tropical fruits right in your face, real heavy. And I poured it out, and I thought, I bet this is going to be really thick and gloopy. And actually, it isn't thick in any way.
Sorry, it looks lovely in the glass, though.
Oh, I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying it should be thick. I just thought it would be. It's not. It looks quite thin. Lovely little head on it, lots of tiny little bubbles, but it smells amazing. Yeah, that fruit is there from the Idaho 7, and then the Mosaic is bringing an element of sort of greenness into it.
And just to go back to what we were sort of talking about with a can art for mine, now you mentioned there the cartoon strip, but that's probably doing it a slight disservice. There's a lot to be said for this.
Yes,
Again, you'd pick it on a shelf, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yes, you're absolutely going to see this a million miles away.
So what sort of cartoon have we got here?
Now, I am no expert when it comes to cartoons. I think my knowledge of cartoons stopped with the Beano.
Well, that's not probably a bad thing, I would say. That relates to that.
Well, I tell you what it reminds me of, actually, is the opening to Grange Hill. Remember the cartoon strip?
Yeah, okay.
But maybe I'm just steeped in some sort of weird nostalgia from the 80s, I don't know.
We'll put the can up on Insta anyway, so you can have a look. But basically, if you think of the sort of American pulp comic books in the 50s and the 60s with the white block and then sort of bam, pow, Batman from the 60s when it was Adam West and everything.
Yeah, that's it.
It's all that.
Yeah. But it's very clever stuff, and it doesn't half stand out on the shelf or on the website, wherever you're buying it from,
We've both got both cans, actually, so we can put them both together and everyone can see. And you can just see the contrast of how one brewery can do two very different beers, two very different lots of can art, and still make both very appealing. And I think that as much as anything is what we wanted to have it for Hive or Tripe, because it's quite impressive to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great beer again. If I'd got another one in the box, would I be rushing to have it tomorrow night? Probably not, but it's a very good beer. It's just that I don't particularly want to drink 8.5% beers every night, And the same as you don't necessarily want a 7.5% beer. You'd much rather have a Pilsner or something while you're cooking the tea. As far as it goes with these two beers, absolutely both hype for pretty much the same reasons, really. They really hit the mark. Great beers, great can art, great brewery. We're well with them.
You're listening to Dave B. and Dave D. on Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Regular listeners to the podcast will know that on our last episode, we started a new feature called Any Other Beersness. And you may also notice that we've got together a new logo recently. And if you've been watching our socials, you may have noticed we've had some beer mats printed to put in various pubs all over the country and beer boxes and all that sort of thing. Now, the person who's responsible for getting these beer mats to us joins us now on the podcast. Welcome, Nathan Houghton. How you doing, Nathan?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
That's okay. And you're from a company who specialises in the production of beer mats.
Yeah, correct. So I'm the marketing manager for Mosaic Board Print in Kettering, and we are the UK's largest beer mat manufacturer, as in proper beer mats. You can Google beer mat printing, but they're cheap. There's a lot of cheats out there. Well, we are proper.
This is the thing. We've been meaning to get beer mats for about 2 years, and you look on the internet and you see everybody does beer mats, from Vistaprint to whoever, everybody does them. And it's an absolute minefield. So in the end, we just didn't do it.
That is the problem. There's a lot of people say that they can do beer mats. But, we print on 1.2, 1.4 millimeter pulp board, proper traditional beer mats. These are designed to soak up liquid.
Yes.
There you go. You're taking the words out of my mouth. Yeah. When I think of a beer mat, it should be able to soak up any spillage. Not that I want to, but accidents happen.
Yeah, 100%. We like the good old fashioned beer mat.
How many breweries have you got as your customers?
Right, so I have to be a little bit careful because we do get a lot of work through third parties. So there's a lot of big breweries out there that don't know we exist. If I said going through some of your shows or some of the big breweries, we do most of them. We did a massive run for a very popular black and white stout, which is very, very famous in Ireland. Yeah. So we do, I would say, 90% of the big breweries. But it's probably more than that, actually.
So when you made us 300 beer mats, that was quite a small order compared to what you guys are used to then?
We print like 120 million beer mats a year, right? I mean, in our peak last summer, we've done 5 million mats a week, but that's not what we're all about as such. I mean, the equipment that Mosaic have got, if you sign off your artwork by lunchtime Monday, as long as it's not more than, I think it's 5,000 is the threshold, you can have your order delivered by Friday.
And we know this to be true.
Well, yes, as you guys have found out, yeah.
Yes.
But, we can couple that with running huge quantities for your massive breweries.
So you really do cater for everybody from very tiny to absolutely huge.
Exactly right. And it's funny, what we're finding is people are using beer mats almost sort of differently these days. I don't know if you guys have noticed, right? When I was going to the pub a lot, in my youth, the good old days, and there'd be beer mats sort of strewn everywhere. It doesn't seem to happen like that anymore, in my experience. I don't know whether it's because they're cleaning the tables more because of COVID, or I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. I always think there's a lot of beer mats in boxes at bars, and you can ask for mats, but there doesn't seem to be this just strewn across the tables anymore. I don't know if you guys agree, or...
I can tell you one thing. Round here, there's going to be plenty of beer mats on tables soon. I know that.
Are they bright yellow?
They're bright yellow ones, yeah. I know what you mean. I think you might be right there. You do kind of see less of them.
You've almost answered a question I had with a question, because I was going to say, is the beer mat trade as good as it used to be? Because I remember you go into a bar and you put your pint down, put a coaster under it, no dramas. You'd almost have the holders sometimes in the middle of the table, away we go. That doesn't happen now. Have beer mat sales dried up because people aren't interested? But I do notice when I order beers from craft beer places, a lot of them will chuck some beer mats in the box with the beers.
Exactly that. That's kind of what we're finding. Our business cards are beer mats, and we've had quite a good success of sort of suggesting to other companies, why don't you use beer mats as a business card, because they're quite tactile. It's quite a nice thing to hold, right? I don't know if people are using beer mats not in the traditional sense.
It's like Dave says, we get a beer delivery. I had one today. There were some beer mats in there. I won't use them as beer mats. I'll use them as decorative items around my office and stuff, just to look at.
Yeah, well, a good example, we work really closely with Scarborough Football Club. What they do is they put their football fixtures on the backs of their beer mats.
Oh, that's good.
Nice. Yeah, clever, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that straight away. I'd keep one of those at home. I'd pick another few up in jeans, definitely when I've had a few. And then I'd probably give one to someone else at some point. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We've had quite a bit of a sort of a rush. I suppose it's because it's coming towards summer. Like wedding save-the-date cards. So
why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, quite a few people that are getting married have thought, well, we'll do a save-the-date card, but we'll send you a beer mat.
Oh, I
like that. I wish I was getting married again now. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, what I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about, which fits perfectly with that. On Instagram, I see all these breweries, these, in fact, guys that you deal with, right? And they spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on some really cool artwork. Some of the tap clips and some of the beer labels and stuff is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really cool. But I don't see that transferring over to the beer mat world. I don't know why.
That's interesting, because we've just been talking about a couple of beers tonight where we've been all over their artwork, saying how good it looks and everything. So do you think, therefore, that if you're releasing a really good beer that's got really good can artwork, but there's a sort of bit of untapped potential in putting that same artwork on a beer mat?
I don't know if I've got to try and get the message out there, because we can do 250 beer mats. I think it's 66 quid, which to me, if you're releasing a brand new beer, 66 quid to get your brand or your beer in front of thousands of people doesn't seem that expensive to me. And I don't know if it's because people think beer mats are too much money, or don't want to throw money at something that, it's going to get soaked in beer.
That is really interesting, because there's some beers that come out every year. There's a big thing about them. There's one called Chubbles, it comes out every year. There's one called Putty, it comes out every year. And there's massive hysteria in the craft beer world about these beers.
Right, okay.
And I imagine if there was a beer mat that was sold alongside these beers, it'd be perfect, wouldn't it?
That's what I'm trying to help Mosaic with, because as you guys know, there's so many of these cool little breweries out there, and I think they're missing a trick. I really do. Some of the artwork, I think, is properly wicked.
The other thing I was going to say as well is I noticed that recently there was a whole book on beer mats came out. So there is an appetite for it.
There's definitely a love of beer mats. So Tim and I were invited to the annual Beer Mat Award and auction in Burton-upon-Trent. We met some beer mat collectors. Actually, we met a lot of beer mat collectors. I mean, some people are proper into it.
Yeah, beer mats, pump clips, all that sort of jazz.
So what they do, they have them all out on a table, and I think you can pay a couple of quid, and then you can pick the ones that you're looking for. They're just like your bog standard ones. But then later on in the afternoon, they had an auction, and I think one of the beer mats sold for 350 quid.
Wowzers.
Wow.
Better keep a few Daftaboutcraft beer mats in the back of the cupboard.
Yeah. They could be worth a fortune next week.
I remember when I was a kid, my dad, sadly no longer with us, he used to have a study, and in his study, he used to like his real ales and stuff occasionally, no massive beer drinker, but he used to collect beer mats, and there used to be a big, thick pile of beer mats that fascinated me. There's more to beer mats than just being on a table to soak up beers.
Yeah, I get the whole beer mat thing, because it especially now, if you go back 30, 40 years and you get your real ale ones, it's charting the history of beer almost, because half of those, sadly, probably aren't around anymore. Right, and I get what Dave was saying with seeing your dad's ones, because you get these things from like, this was from somewhere in the West Midlands, this was somewhere in the East Midlands, this was somewhere in North Yorkshire, and it's like, where are these now? And like,
I can remember one that was for Beacon Bitter. I'm sure they're long since gone, but that was 35 years ago, and I can still remember it.
Yeah, so that's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah,
there is something very charming about that. Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to do is get everybody to think like we do about beer mats, maybe. I think my mission is to get beer mats out and about again.
We should tell people that it is not just beer mats that you do.
Oh, of course, yes, we do cartons as well, can carriers and stuff.
I had an amazing box, well, Dave would have had the same box of beers drop on our doorstep from a brewery called Pressure Drop. Did you have the same box as me, Dave? It was pink on the inside.
Oh,
what a box.
Yeah, it says a lot, but I really like the box as well. Like, it really stood out.
Wicked.
And the way it opened, this is getting really in the weeds now. One of those boxes which is front opening like that and sort of goes back to unveil what's in, rather than the whole take a knife, or if you haven't got a knife, take the car keys and slash the top open. It really stood out.
And you pull this box back and there's a message in front of you which you can read, and then when you've taken the cans out of the box, there's another message underneath the cans. And I took all the cans out and put them in the fridge and thought, I can't throw this box away. It's too good. It's too good to throw away. I've kept it.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same with that box. It really did stand out in terms of beer boxes, and we do get a few.
Yeah. So is this the sort of thing that you do as well?
We have a carton expert, Tim, actually. Tim does a bit of Blue Peter, because once he's done all like the CAD part of the box, he likes to make one up. Outside my office, I've got like a big light table. And many times I've seen Tim out there with scalpels, double-sided tape, and an array of box tools. But we do all boxes. Well, plastic is the enemy, isn't it, at the minute? Cardboard is your friend.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, that's another good thing I can say about our beer mats. They're printed on recycled card, and they're 100% recyclable, which is also jackpot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if anybody listening to this, and there's a lot of people from a lot of breweries who listen to this, they fancy trying out some beer mats from yourself, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can email me, which is nathan@mosaic-boardprint.com, or find us on Instagram. Yeah, Google us.
And what's the smallest run you'll do for somebody?
250.
And that's the 60 odd pounds?
I think it's 66 quid.
They don't look flimsy, do they? They look like a proper beer mat.
Even if you've had a few beers and you sort of knock one over like we do occasionally.
You can do a good game of the flipping.
100%. That's kind of what I'm trying to do, because, like I said, there's lots of cheats out there, but we are the real deal.
Daftaboutcraft.
Before we go, Dave, you know what time it is, don't you? It's Chubbles time.
Listeners of the last episode will know that I summarised why we didn't want to do putty. Now, I can be easily in the same ballpark with Chubbles. I know they do 1,000,001 versions of it, but
I got to say, when I saw it was nearly Chubbles time again, I thought, oh my goodness, the last 12 months have gone that quickly. But do I want another half a dozen versions of this beer that are probably going to taste very similar to what we had last year and the year before?
Yeah.
Give me something new.
I'm in the same camp, but if people would like us to review Chubbles for the next one for Hype or Try, just a simple yes or no, you can comment on anything you like or send us a message and just say Chubbles yes, Chubbles no, or something like that. We'll put a post up on socials as well, just saying, do you want us to have a go at that one?
Actually, tell you what we'll do. We'll pop up a poll on the socials and we'll see how many people want us to.
There you go.
The ball's in your court, listeners. Tell us what you want and we'll do it.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.